Okay, so welcome to the third session of this group. And today we are going to talk about literature review, a very important part of a dissertation. Let's begin, as usual, with a quote which summarizes the nature of literature review. And I want to emphasize the importance that critical analysis has in it. Since your main task when writing academic papers, especially dissertation, is to convince people, you have to treat information in such a way that you provide consistent arguments, that is to say, claims and evidence, and that is only possible if you generate those arguments critically. That's the importance of critical analysis. And this is the agenda for today. As usual, the first point of the agenda is to talk about the exercise that was given to you the previous week. Let's begin by talking about your reflection. Not your reflection, sorry. An example of the problem statement. Okay? Here you have an example of how this person wrote the problem statement. Okay? We can go back to it in the question and answer section and talk about that. And this is the reflection upon how promising research problem is. And I ask you that we can discuss that later on. Can you identify with this reflection what aspect of it catch your attention? Okay. So literature review is in fact a stage of the dissertation process to which we would have to devote more than a session. But that is not possible in this occasion since there are other stages that we need to talk about. Perhaps, and we are considering it, we can create a group to work only the literature review in the near future. At the beginning of the next year, we can have a group just to develop the literature review. Right now, we will focus on the goal of providing you a basic picture of how to deal with it. Contrary to the usual way in which I present content within the slides, this time I had to include much more writing. It may make the presentation less attractive, but considering the amount of information needed to clarify literature review and the fact that we have just one session to do it, I took the risk and included as much as possible so you can read the slides after this meeting and have a good input to reflect upon, okay? When you write the literature review of your dissertation, you are building the foundation of it. Think of it as the basis of a house. Your dissertation will be developed upon it, and within the limit it establishes. Therefore, as it happens with a house, any part of your dissertation that is not based on it may collapse. So important literature review is. This figure shows some of the questions that can be answered through literature review. And this supports the importance we have assigned to it because those areas are behind most of the decisions you have to make in the dissertation process. Let's have a look at the purposes of the literature review. As you can see, these purposes are intended to give your research a clear and supported place in a specific field of study. In fact, we can summarize the purposes of the literature review into these 4 goals, which make clear what is already known, what is unknown, how your study is linked to others, and what variables are related to the target problem. There are many ways of approaching the development of the literature review, and you can choose the process that most appeals to your cognitive style. However, the stages presented in the slide, in one way or another, will always be part of it. Although they are presented here as a sequence, some of them are usually done simultaneously, like reading and registering information. Let's begin with the stage of reading. Reading for getting the kind of information you need to develop the literature review of your study must be focused, purposeful, and critical in order to understand contents deeply, and that implies you have to use specific reading strategies. You cannot read as if your goal were to get entertainment. Therefore, I will suggest you some steps to follow. These steps leads you to perform a purposeful reading. When you want to find out about the elements on the left column, you have to focus on the elements on the right column. In this way, you look for the information you really need. Second step, making a list of questions before reading lets you perform a focused reading. You may ask questions about the ideas, questions to analyze, reflect, and evaluate, or questions of both types. These are questions about ideas and the relationship to other study. These kind of questions show that you are reading actively. Okay. And these are the kind of questions that let you perform critical analysis. When you read trying to answer questions about ideas and questions that conduct critical analysis, you are doing a more productive reading that will impact the quality of your literature review. So when you begin, before beginning reading, you prepare for answering this question. You have this question near to you and you focus on finding answers to them. The third step, read the abstract. Reading the abstract lets you know if the reading is related to your study and what points of it are interesting to you. This saves time and effort. As the slide points out, do not avoid reading those arguments that are against your point of view, since they may enhance your understanding of the problem. So don't just rely on those readings that are for your point of view. You can get a lot of important information, and usually that may be the most valuable contribution of your dissertation when you read sources that oppose you. That's good, Adrian. Okay, and if you need to find out a specific information, the scanning reading strategy is the best option, since it takes you to pay attention to parts of the reading that may have what you are looking for. So it's a very quick strategy to get what you need. The skimming reading strategy, on the other hand, is focused on finding the main ideas of a text without spending too much time in each paragraph. Once you have a first input of the information you need, it's time to evaluate which pieces of information require a deeper reading. Okay? And these are the areas on which you can focus to expand the information found relevant and consequently to understand it deeper. Okay? Thank you that you like this set of slides. These are the reasons why following the steps may be a very useful tool for you. And then you can see that steps 1 and 2 help you focus your reading, while step 3 lets you know if that is important or it is worth it to continue reading. Step 4 and 5 give you basic information, and step 6 and 7 let you define the real impact of what you are reading in relation to your own study. It is important to know how to register the gathered information in a way that can be retrieved easily and, more importantly, accurately and usefully. Okay? The better you register information, the less effort and time when writing the literature review. The next 2 slides will present what information is advisable to register in the software you use. You can begin with the author and publication information and include the pivotal element of the study you read. However, that may not be enough when you have to perform critical analysis. That's why the kind of information presented in this slide may improve the usefulness of your records. If you include this information, you will have a strong basis to write your literature review without getting back to read the source, and will even know where you can include it. So when you include this kind of information and you say, okay, I'm going to develop the background of my study in relation to this variable, you go to your software and look for the information that you have registered to use in that specific section, so you don't have to read again. And the next step takes you nearer to the task of writing, because this stage is organizing your ideas. Is a crucial stage of the literature review development, since it defines what and in what order the information will be included. If you do this before actually writing, you will be able to check the coherence, cohesion, and consistency of the information. Establish if you have any gap of information the readers need to understand the discussion of your ideas, and be sure your ideas flow smoothly. So if you organize your idea before writing, you get all those benefits. This is a stage that happens concurrently to the other stages. It is focused on acknowledging the contribution of other people to your work. As you know, plagiarism is a severe academic offense. Therefore, you have to avoid it. In the slide, you have some key points to take into account when acknowledging sources in a dissertation. Paying special attention to the last one, since if you know right from the beginning what referencing style your university requires you to use, you can select it in your referencing software. However, I want to recommend you not to rely solely on the program to write your citations, since its accuracy depends on how you have introduced the information. If you use inappropriate spelling or capitalization, wrong names of title, or have incomplete information, the citation will be written wrongly in your dissertation. We can summarize that situation as garbage in, garbage out. Of course, there is also another option to assure accuracy when acknowledging sources, and it is to hire an editor that takes care of that, and that, like me, has become what I call a reference detective, because usually the papers that I have to edit have incomplete information, and I have to surf the internet looking for the missing information. So I'm kind of Sherlock Holmes of references. And when we get to the stage of expressing ideas, this is a stage that relies on your mastering of academic writing, and in which you use the input of the other stages, especially the stage of organizing your ideas. It is focused on writing paragraphs for the different sections of the literature review. It's a kind of baby step stage, and the slide summarizes what you should do. And the last stage is focused on writing the first draft of your literature review. It is developed by putting together the products of expressing your ideas and connecting all the parts to make a coherent and consistent whole that function as a unit. The slide summarizes what you can do to build a good initial product. As you can see, the tasks mentioned are very reflective. And that means that writing a good literature review is not a cut and paste work, but rather a task based on evaluating, making relationships explicit, and linking your own study to the framework of theories and research relevant to understand and explain your research problem. Due to its nature, literature review is a dissertation element in which students tend to make mistakes. As the slide points out, those mistakes can be in three areas. The first area refers to the kind of mistakes that affect the cohesion and coherence of the review and include, but is not limited to, the errors mentioned in the slide. I would like to clarify that not intending plagiarism. It refers specifically to either including claims whose authors did not support with evidence, or not including page numbers in direct quotation. That is, not intending plagiarism. Some of the mistakes related to structure and elements are the ones mentioned in the slide, which hinder the contextualization of the study, the readability of the literature review, its completeness and significance, and its degree of critical analysis. And these mistakes diminish the significance and impact of the study. If the study has information that cannot be evaluated or that cannot be considered valid, then its findings and conclusions cannot be trusted, and the study may be meaningless. Okay? And this is the main idea we have discussed today. The literature review is essential to the study because it defines the framework within which the whole study is based and linked to the relevant research network. And I know that you have a lot of questions, and it's time to address that. Write down the purpose of the literature review in the introduction. In how much detail, not too much detail, because you only have to write down perhaps one sentence saying to what is the goal of that literature review, to what that literature review is pointed to. So it has, it's just a summary. It's usually just with, you can write just one sentence and says what is the intention behind that literature review. One sentence with a citation. What do you refer to, Mark? Where did I say that or wrote that? You mean for the purpose of the literature review in the introduction? Are you overwhelmed with all what we said today? No, it's not to summarize the literature review in one sentence. It's to summarize the purpose of the literature review. Let me give you an example. Suppose that you are doing a dissertation about one educational theory, specifically, the application of one educational theory. So in one sentence, you say that this literature review will be used to clarify all the variables involved in the theory that we have chosen, for instance. That's what you say. Not that you summarize the whole literature review in one sentence, but the purpose of it. Why you write down that literature review? It is in fact because you want to establish a framework into which you are going to discuss the whole theoretical, conceptual, and research elements of your dissertation. And as I said in the example, you need to think of literature review as a kind of foundation of a house. You can put anything dentro, you have to discuss anything in your dissertation within the limits that establish the literature review. You cannot go out, because if you discuss things that are not in the literature review, supported by discussion, critical analysis, and research, that will not be considered consistent. This chapter established how output robustness may serve as an empirical framework for approximating. Yeah, the first sentence established the purpose of your literature review. Okay, it says relying on out-of-date material. A lot of information in my field is not, but it's still valid and relevant. Well, Annalene, that's what is called the seminal works. Usually, it is expected that your citations should not be older than 10 years. And you say, why? Because our work changes a lot in 10 years, okay? However, there are certain works that are considered seminal, that are considered the most important works within your field of study, and then you have to use them. But the idea is that you don't know to rely on that material, only on that material, but try to use recent sources that let us know if those ideas are still valid. How about why artificial intelligence being used for predictive analysis? While 90% accurate for predictability, the 10% may cost you 100% of your company. Well, with anything, in my opinion, any technology, any artificial intelligence is just a tool. So it depends on how you use the tool and to what you use that tool. So it's a matter of choosing, like when you choose a research design, is of choosing what is the most appropriate, accurate, and useful tool to achieve your goal. So it's not a matter that depends on the technology itself, but on the way that people use that technology. It's like, for instance, like editing academic papers, editing this dissertation, for instance. You can use, there are some software programs to check, and they say edit your dissertation. But the stage of development of artificial intelligence today is not enough to get the subtle things that are behind editing a dissertation. It's not just a matter of grammar, checking spelling, or checking citation. It's a matter of checking if everything is connected, if ideas are on the same wave, okay? And if everything is functioning as a unit. So is the software wrong, or is the software the culprit of failing? No, it's the way that you use it, and perhaps that some technologies are not still as advanced as necessary to reflect and evaluate human mind. Yeah, if terms are used coherently, it's a very complex set of relationships that you need a person who knows that, who is good at connected things, and also knows all that is behind a dissertation. Toby, how does Satan use the elements of spiritual warfare to drive Christians to the state of prayerilessness And how has this strategy affected the way we pray, worship, preach, make discipline? What can be done to shift the focus back to God? What part of your dissertation is it? Is that a research question? Okay. Anything that you need to support the answer to that question has to be discussed in literature review. So you have to discuss, for instance, spiritual warfare, what spiritual warfare is and how you understand it and use it in your dissertation, for instance. What state of prayerlessness is. You have to discuss in the literature review all the information that make that question clear, but also that interpret the answer to that question. My pleasure, Toby. Okay, Adrian is having an exchange of ideas with Mark about the 90% and the 10% of inaccuracy and that kind. Great. Erica, you are so quiet. I'm worried. And Joy, you are so quiet. I'm worried. Do you want me to explain any of the slides that we have checked? Yes, I remember, Erica. Yes, you're right. As I said before at the beginning, this is not the kind of slides that we use to present. Not this one, the ones that has this kind, for instance. It has a lot of things, but I think that this information will help you then when you check it, the handout, or you check the recording, you will have a good idea of what you have to do in order to perform well in each one of those stages. Okay. Yes, this information is intended to you to reflect upon it, okay? That you can check it, discuss it. This is a good thing to discuss in the, you don't have a group, my goodness, a secret group at Facebook. You don't have that. But it's something that you can discuss among you, okay? How do you interpret each one of this? And that's why I said that I'm reflecting and trying to prepare a group like this, but only to write down, to develop the literature review, trying to apply all these things each week in order to say. Okay, that's good, Adrian. Well, but you can put it, you can print it and put it there and say, here in this part of the wall, I have the stages. In this part of the wall, I have specifically how to read. Remember that everything begins with reading, okay? And if you read in a purposeful way, in a focused way, and you register the information concurrently with that reading, you will save a lot of time, a lot of effort when you are developing your dissertation, because reading is the beginning of the whole process. If you read in an appropriate way, not say in an appropriate, I could say in a not so productive way, you will have to get back to the sources, read them again, and then that will implies a lot of time. Let's check that part of the presentation, because I think here you have, oh well, here it is. Okay. Annalyn said, avoid long string of references for single point. In one of the examples, there was literature, a reference behind every second word. It was hard to read. You mean in one of the examples of what you did before last week? Because is that what you referred to the example that the example of the problem statement? I don't know what you referred to. Okay, here you have, when you begin to read, when you think, yeah, but you know that there is just two references for the first point. The thing is that word was written by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, but there are just 1, 2 of them. Delayed, bruscas is just one. And the other one, for Bostani, Mexel, and Gottman, is just one source. Macaulay and Davis, one, another one, and the other one is, you have 4 there. Okay? The thing is that the sources had been written by too many people. And the first time that you mention, at least in APA, that you mention a source, you have to write down all the author if they are fewer than 6. Okay? From that, on next occurrences, you can say it all. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so first of all, you establish what type of information you want to read. And that makes it easy, because you say, okay, if I'm looking for research design of similar study, I just have to go to how the study was conducted. It could, Adrian, that depends on the references style that you are using. And also, for APA, you have to mention all of them at the first time, because they are fewer than 6. But if you are using Harvard, you can use E et al. Just from the first occurrence. Okay. Any other question that you want to talk? For instance, this is something that usually students don't do. Make a list of questions when they are going to read. And this is very important, because if you read looking for the answer to these questions, you will have enough information that will be useful for writing your literature review without going back to the source. You begin with ideas. What's the main idea? What is the evidence? Keywords, and you have all those questions next to your reading, but these ones are the ones necessary to perform critical analysis. You need this information in order to perform critical analysis. Okay? Okay. Any other question? These are the strategies. These are two strategies that are very useful because that depends on the purposes of what you are assigning to the reading. Which is the first step. You have to say, what is the purpose of me reading this? Yeah. Yeah, that one is this one you mentioned. Let me see. This one. Yep. They can give you a good idea of what you want to do. Yeah, of course. The first time that you read an article, Adrian, you have to do it according to the purpose that you have decided that for that reading. Are you interested in main ideas? So you use skimming. Are you interested in a specific information, like, for instance, what was the research design used? You use scanning. You go very, very fast and look. Oh, here I have the research design. So you don't have to read word by word unless you do that when you go to this part, when you decided, okay, I have very interesting information and I want to expand that information. Let me, here you have. Okay, here you have. When you want to expand what you got, because you have common and divergent points, or you want to check what's the usefulness for your study, that kind of things. Well, it is possible, Joy, that you read an article because you change your purpose. For instance, you can read the abstract and you say, oh, I think it is worth it to read this because of this. And then you read for the main ideas. You skim for the main ideas. And then you decide, I think I have to check what is the main theory that they use to support their claims. And then you scan in order to get that information. Oh, well, the most productive way of doing that, Joy, is that you defined the purpose of your reader before. Okay, so perhaps the first purpose is to know if it is worthy to read that article, that reading. And if it is, in order to get that, you check the abstract. If that reading does not clarify you about if it is worth it or not, then you do skimming and look for the main ideas of each paragraph. Very, very quick. Okay, and that's all. And then you decided, no, this will not be useful for my study. Oh yes, it will be useful for my study. There is a great method then using an Excel spreadsheet with a list of a slide 20 and 26. Well, use it as you think is important, okay? You can define all these elements in your reference software, okay? If you use, for instance, EndNote to name one, you can go to the setting and decide to put author, title, year of publication, publication information, research, all those things, okay? And then these things, and you put it there, okay? And when you need them, you go back to that source and you have all the information you need to perform critical analysis. If you want to do it in an Excel spreadsheet, it's okay. What I want you is to know that a purposeful and focused reading is perhaps one of the most productive skills or things that you need in order to develop your dissertation. You need to get the information that really helps you not only write down your literature review, but also interpret your findings based on that literature review. Any other things to ask, to exchange, to propose? I love to include these common mistakes in each part of the dissertation process, so we can do that. Referencing, Lorraine or Margie quoted me on the Facebook group and they did not reference properly as they spelled my name wrong. So write down to them and tell them, hey, you did this wrongly. Please correct it. Yes, of course, but it's true. I mean, it's acknowledging sources properly. The literature review matrix at times feels a bit too rigid to me because it's hard to indicate nonlinear links and relationship among the studies. Well, you can use, as I have said in previous webinars, each person has their own cognitive and learning style. So you have to choose the tools that better reflects or that better that better goes on the same line that your styles. So some people, for instance, like me, like outlines. Other people prefer mind map. Okay, other people prefer concept and any other thing. So if you feel that the literature review matrix does not make is not good enough to reflect links and relationship, why don't you make a diagram in which you connect them? Yeah, it's okay. So you don't have to use a tool because we say that they exist. You have to use the tools that are more appealing to you, to your cognitive and learning style. And that's why it is good, for instance, at Doctoral Net, we try to have not only article reading material, but also video or audio things, so you can choose whatever you think is better for you. Okay, let me go to the exercise for today. Here you have the exercise for today. It has 3 parts. First, you write an outline to develop your literature review or a mind map if you prefer that. Then you write a paragraph to reflect upon how coherent that outline or mind map is. And finally, you reflect upon how you approach those tasks and feel about doing them. Okay? It is clear what I'm expecting you to do. Remember that if you want my feedback, send it to me not later than Sunday. Okay, so I could have time to check it and give you enough feedback. This is the list of references that we have talked to today. And this is, I forgot to put in italics the title of the second reference, Avoiding Common Errors in Your Literature Review. That part should be in italics. Sorry about that. And this is, as I said in the other webinar, what is up at DoctoralNet and the next webinars. And remember that before Christmas, you have enough time to do some things in relation to your studies, okay? Any question? Anything to share? Thank you very much. You know that I'm not only a teacher by heart, but I have a lot of experience because I'm old. I'm okay. I'm glad to know that, because that's the idea behind all this webinar, is to let you know that it's difficult, but it's doable. You can do it. You just need some guidelines to do it. Yes, well, not always age brings wisdom. Not always. I have known many old people who are as blank in their mind as when they were born. Okay, that's good. Okay, it's good. It's good to be at college. Yeah. You are 58, have a college kid, and so on. I'm 65. So in September, I officially enter into the old age, it could be said, but I don't feel like that. Not physically, not mentally, and not emotionally. Only on papers. It's good to know that, really. Okay, Adrian says, my advisor requested that I test code 5% of the data in order to assess the feasibility of my coding scheme, which she co-developed with them. I have 1 week time to finish that before meeting with her. Well, my dear, that's part of being a PhD student. Oh, thank you very much, my dear, because you know that when we share, you share and I share experiences, we can realize that we are not alone on that in life, and we are not alone in the dissertation process, and that we are just, how can I say, we are experiencing what other people have experienced before and have been successful. So you are the college kid, Mark. I like that. Well, and sometimes, Erica, as your legs feels too. In my case, no problem with them. I'm used to walk 4 and 5 kilometers each day, so no problem. Good. Oh, Toby, great. You're 7. I love that. That means that your brain is effervescent, and that's very, very good. Yeah. That's good to know, Annalie, because the idea is exactly that people who are far apart can exchange ideas, can see that it is possible to do what you are intended to do. That's true, Erica. Sometimes I say I don't want to go downstairs and walk, but then when I try to do it and I do it, I feel great for the rest of the day. Philosophy, such a great subject. Such a great subject, which is very important in research. Even though we don't realize it, when we choose a research design, for instance, we are choosing a philosophy of conceiving word and conceiving life. We have to talk about that when we get to research design. So, Mark, you are in reform school. Have you been naughty, perhaps? Oh, let me end the recording, but we can continue exchanging ideas, no problem.